Welcome to another Thoughts of a Whole Brain Man. Um, a most curious thing to ask you. Uh, One could form a very natural conclusion that all of your thoughts are encased inside here, and that all of your thoughts are nothing more than the result of processes of neurobiochemistry. We are nothing more than our synapses and our affective system and our homeostasis. There isn't a part of the brain that has a sense of, this is the self area. Neuroscientists agree there isn't a neural referent for the perpendicular pronoun or I. And yet we have a sense of self. In Buddhism, they say there isn't a self, there's a non-self, and they see the self as a process. And neuroscientists say the self or the sense of self is the result of a process. But the question for this little chat is the mind encased inside your skull? Is that where your thoughts reside? Or do your thoughts reside outside of your body? Does the human mind extend beyond the skin? There's neuroscience kind of began to accelerate in its complexity in correlation with computer technologies. There was a time in the 1970s when the languages of both disciplines would cross-reference, and for some time people said that things like the brain is the hardware and your personality is the software. Right? So an academic called Andy Clark proposed what he called wideware. And in his idea of wideware, one's cognition extends beyond the body to include the wider environment around you. For example, as far as it's this idea, as far as the brain is concerned, when you're tapping things on your phone is a part of your cognition. If you have a favorite pen, that pen becomes part of your cognition. If you lose that pen and you pick up, or someone lends you their pen, it feels different. It doesn't feel the same. It feels odd. I can't write with this. It's not my proper pen, right? So our brains habituate not just to what's happening on our skin and beneath our skin, but also in the environment around us. If you like, the muscle memory of the immediate environment might be another way of thinking about it. But is it the case? Yes, there's a thing. Is this wideware idea, does it hold water? Is there something in it? Is it factual or is it nonsense? There's a book called The Extended Mind, edited by Richard Menery. Again, as always, I'll put a link to the book in the comments below. This book doesn't form a conclusion. It's an argument. And it's literally chapter by chapter of an academic arguing with Andy Clark. And so you can read, argument for the case for, argument for the case against, response to the argument against, response to the response. And like a tennis match, go back and forth between the two, kind of absorbing what this one has to say and having a look at what this one has to say. And perhaps, maybe by the end of it, forming your own conclusion all about it. Yes, a little thing, perhaps, but maybe not. Sometimes we might think, oh, they're acting rather dramatically just because someone sat in their chair, or they're acting in a very kind of dramatic way just because someone drank tea from their mug. Right? But there could be something more than that. It could be, for some people, that the furniture of our life is also a part of the furniture of our cognition. And how we relate with the world around us is as if the structure of the objects, the furniture, the distances between things, the topography of our immediate environment is also, in part, the topography of our internal sense of what the world is. And if some changes are made within that topography on the outside, it causes us to have to make changes with our relational topography on the inside. Even if it's something like, the town planners put in a new junction on the road. Now suddenly you're experiencing a change in the landscape around you, and that changes your emotions as you get up to that junction. The first time it's what's happening. There's confusion, bewilderment. There might be curiosity. After a while, there's a habituation and a sense of familiarity, and we know that the junction is there now, and we can't even remember what it was like before it was there. You know, that happens both in a local sense and in a broader sense in our lives. That happens also with the people in our lives and the things we acclimatize to. You can witness, if example, the emotional reaction that people have if a favorite, rock and roll band disband. How upset people can be when, a favorite singer leaves to go off on a solo career. How disgusted people can be when a solo singer gets together with some other people that they don't like. What happens when a favorite musician or artist change music genre? People got used to that with Bowie. But for other people, no, you can't have the Rolling Stones suddenly doing lounge jazz. That's just unthinkable. It's not allowed for some reason, right? Yes, but is it okay? One of the things that makes human beings so successful is adaptability, our ability to react and respond and adjust according to changing circumstances. So, do we have flexibility in our extended mind, or are we rigid? And that means, do we have substance, habit, tradition? Do we have adventure, curiosity, and flexibility? And what's the balance between these things? And where are they balanced in our lives? Because there might be an area of your life where you're highly flexible and adaptable. And there might be an area of life where you're absolutely rigid and, you've got your habitual things and it must be this way, or somehow the sky will fall down. As an exercise, you might find that there might be portions of our life where it'd actually be easier if we had a sense of, repeated stability. Sometimes routine can help us to figure out the day, but sometimes routine could be a straitjacket as well. Yes. Are there parts of our lives where we have, flexibility to the extent we get nothing done? Are there parts of our lives where we have an over rigidity that we can't function if we didn't do something in the expected way? I often find that the quote from John Lennon, "Life is what happens when you're planning other things," is such a very useful thing to remember. You know, yes, the extended mind. It's worth a thought. Thank you. See you again on Thoughts of a Whole Brain Man.